So the game is called Sun's Dojo. I programmed it from scratch with GBDK, also known as the Game Boy Development Kit. And I even wrote it to a physical cartridge that I can play anywhere on my real Game Boy and GBA. The game started life as me trying to recreate a mini game from a Nintendo Entertainment System or Famicom game called Dragon Ball Shinran no Nazo. So it's the second Dragon Ball game that was published, and in America it was called Dragon Power. So they had kind of censored it. But one of the mini games in there is Goku fighting Krillin at the World Martial Arts Tournament. I had already started creating a few demo projects for Dragon Ball recreations, but this one was something where I was like, oh, okay, I can do this. And then for design, I took inspiration from a previous game I created called The Black Dragon, which was also a platform beat 'em up. The main character of this game was actually unnamed, but after thinking up this Game Boy game that I was gonna make, I decided to name him Sun after my favorite character, Son Goku, and main character of the NES game that I was kind of playing before I got started on all this. Version 1 of this project was submitted to the game jam that I mentioned before, GB Compo 21, in October, but due to time constraints, I really wasn't able to finish a lot of things. After the jam ended, I did end up adding a lot of new additions, including color support, a new stage, new mode, and some other quality of life fixes, but actually I'll get into it. So about the game itself, the game consists of 3 modes. The first mode is your standard fighting game, or fight against the computer, kind of reminiscent of just, standard 1v1. This took a lot of time in terms of like programming the characters' AI and trying to make it realistic and to the point where they couldn't beat you just every time, and yet they would still kind of perform like a actual real character. I started with the practice mode where you can hit like this ball around. If you've played Super Smash Bros, you've knocked around the sandbag. That's basically what this is. And I'm not gonna lie, it's satisfying to just knock this ball around for 30 minutes. The third mode that was created was actually a break the targets mode, which did not make it into the final game, but was submitted to the game jam. So that was the first version of it. And I ended up replacing it because I feel like I could have made the game mode a little bit more fun. And so that mode later turned into a survival mode where you're trying to defeat as many enemies as you can. And during this process, I feel like the fun part of this was designing the different enemy types and the behaviors that went along with it. So that was pretty fun. I also ended up making 3 different stages to fight on. The original version I sent only had 1 mode, but I kind of wanted to fill the cartridge, which is 32 kilobytes, with as much content as I could. The second stage and the third stage both take advantage of something called an H-blink interrupt and palette shifting. As the Game Boy is drawing the screen, once it hits a certain line, it will give you an interrupt or alarm saying, hey, I'm at this level. And what you can do is you can change the palette mid-draw of the screen. And I use this to create gradient effects or parallax effects, as you see in kind of the different modes I have in here. I've actually used this technique before in another kind of like homebrew game I made for the Game Boy Advance that was recreating another Dragon Ball game called Dragon Ball Advance Adventure, which I'll talk about at a later time. I think that's also an interesting video. From there, I got the proper equipment and hardware to push the ROM onto a cartridge. I tried mostly to keep to 32 kilobytes for this game, which meant cutting a lot of like the sprites and packing the sprites where I could, so saving as much space as possible. And because of that, if I need to, I can push these cartridges onto cheaper boards so I can print out a lot more in case there's a lot of interest. I started making labels that I printed myself out of my own printer, but I decided to get kind of a more quality feel to order stickers off of an online service so I stuck onto them. And overall, I feel very impressed by what I created with this. If y'all want to play this game, you can look in the description. I'll put a link to the game in the comments, and by the time I put this out, I might have some cartridges available to purchase in case you just want to add it to your collection and support me in the channel. So yeah, thanks for watching.